Hey guys, and welcome back to Spooky Terrifying Monday. Now instead of usually 3 animations, we're gonna do 4. So it's kind of longer video that you guys like. So first is Scary Pool Horror Stories Animated. Now I have a stuffed animal with me and my feet are under the blanket. So you can get me. Okay, let's start.
It was approaching the end of summer, and my friends and I wanted to do some cool, mischievous things before going back to school. So, we had the genius idea one night to sneak into a nearby community pool. It was actually only a couple blocks away. It's right smack in the middle of a residential area, so instead of sitting on a main road or something, it actually just sat around a bunch of houses on a quiet road. During a hot day, the little parking lot would be full and the spot would be bustling. But at 1 a.m, the place was of course dead. There's obviously a big fence surrounding the whole front entrance, as well as a cage that gets closed up when the place closes, so our best way was to get in through the side. We snuck into the backyard of a neighboring house and hopped the fence over to the pool. It was as easy as that. The 4 of us took off our shirts and jumped into the pool, which in retrospect wasn't smart, since any of the neighbors could have heard the splashes and just called the police. But we were dumb high schoolers. It was very, very dark within that whole enclosing. This pool had no lights, which is why it closed at sunset. James, Courtney, and Alyssa were on the other side of the pool, as I was just kind of doing my own thing at first, swimming around and getting my face wet. I saw Alyssa get out of the pool shortly after and run away. I swam over to see what was going on. She was just going to the water fountain, though. The 3 of us just bopped around in the water for a bit, and eventually we heard Alyssa jump back into the pool from the other side. It was too dark to see much more than her black hair covering her face. But just then we heard Alyssa playfully call something to us as she was walking back to the pool. The 3 of us in the pool looked at each other. I know they were doing the same thing as me, counting heads. There were 3 of us on this side of the pool, and here came Alyssa walking over to our side. So who was that on the other side? Alyssa got in, but the 3 of us were distracted, looking at the head bopping around the water across the pool. James said across the pool, "Who is that?" Not even 2 seconds later, the head went underwater and disappeared from view. We took this time to whisper to each other, mostly things like, what should we do? What if that's security? And should we run? Suddenly I felt something grab my leg with force and tried pulling me down into the water. I kicked, splashed.
She's literally using her hair to drag you down. Wow.
Yelled for help. James came over to pull me out of the pool, while the girls were already running for it, screaming. It wasn't until I got to the stairs of the pool that the grip on my leg was released and I was free. We hopped the same fence we climbed over to get in and ran all the way back to Alyssa's house. I was convinced that whoever that was a security guard. That is, until they literally tried to pull me under the water. We don't know what to think. There are a few possibilities. Maybe it was just another kid messing with us, maybe it was a security guard who went way too far, or most likely. I'm 22 years old, fresh out of college, and I recently got a job at my old high school as a sort of computer intern in the school basement. The basement of the school is very messy and disorganized, but there is a small 3-person office that's actually very nice down there. It has 3 nice big desks, 2 mini fridges, a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall, and oh so satisfying air conditioning, a luxury the students and teachers cannot enjoy in the school. And of course, all the school servers and other computery stuff. I got the job because 3 of my old computer teachers flat out adored me. I could actually consider them as real friends, not just teacher figures, so they all helped tremendously in landing me this job. It's been great, until something that happened a few weeks ago. My two coworkers that shared the office with me, Dave and Gary, weren't in the office at the time. They were
Bruh, your homie is supposed to have your back, but they're here flirting with an Indian woman.
upstairs working on papers or whatever. I was eating my sandwich during my lunch break when I got a phone call from one of the women in the front office telling me the school was on lockdown and that somebody, possibly armed, had entered the school. There wasn't much that I could do other than turn off the lights because, surprisingly, as nice as this little office was, it didn't have an actual door to it, just a big opening, and the door to the whole basement didn't even have a working lock.
Wow.
For my own safety, I did turn off all the lights in the office and my computer screen. I kept my phone on the desk, texting both Gary and Dave, but they wouldn't respond. I sat down there in the dark, playing games on my phone for like 20 minutes, waiting for the call from up front to tell me to resume working. I had no idea what was happening. I couldn't hear what was going on upstairs from down here, but I was not allowed to make any calls until I was informed that the lockdown was over. Then the noisy basement door opened. As the creaking echoed across the basement and into my office, I sat up from my seat, wondering if I should call out Gary or Dave. I was eager to get some info from them. Someone then came running down the stairs, and their footsteps were approaching my office. I pushed away my chair and crawled under my desk. Somebody entered the office, but did not turn on the lights. There was just silence. I can't even describe the fear I was experiencing. I felt like if I made one sudden noise, I'd be a dead man. Suddenly, my phone dinged as I got a text message. I felt my entire world shrivel up and die at that one moment as I clenched my teeth in fear. Footsteps suddenly moved closer to me until I finally dove out from under the desk in capitulation, begging whoever it was not to kill me. And just then, someone grabbed my arm and pulled me up. It was some guy in a red plaid button-up, jeans, and a reddish-black cap. He told me, "It's okay, I'm just down here hiding with you." "What's going on up there?" I whispered to him. He kind of ignored my question and asked me if there's an exit down here. I told him, "Yeah, around that way." Before he could do anything else, I asked him, "Who are you?" There was a brief moment of silence before he started explaining he was coming in to pick up his son when a teacher told him to hide. After his explanation, I checked my phone and saw the text I received was from Dave. It said, "Dude, this is fucking crazy. Some guy with a gun shot Mr. Buckley. He's wearing a red shirt and a hat. Whatever you do, don't come upstairs." I was about to reread that text out loud to the man until I realized. I looked up and felt my stomach sink. The man seemed to catch on to my suspicious stare. Panicking, all I could think to do was to run for the upstairs. A gunshot echoed through the basement, and I could hear the bullet ricochet off something metal in the darkness. But thank God the bullet missed me, and I made it upstairs. Fortunately, police were waiting at all exits, including the basement exit, and caught the man the second he opened the door. More good news. Our teacher, Mr. Buckley, survived the gunshot. It was later determined that the man and Mr. Buckley had some beef for whatever reason, but that was never revealed. All we know is that Mr. Buckley couldn't have done anything that would have warranted this kind of reaction. And I know that the sound of that gunshot will forever echo in my mind.
Saturday through Monday, shop 50% off everything online. We holiday only at OldNavy.com.
Last year on Christmas Eve, I was working late. I'm 23. I work in New York City and commute home. His parents would be all the way to Call of Duty with popcorn and other junk food spilled out all over the floor. As the night progressed, we moved from video games to watching half a movie and getting bored to doing prank calls at close to 10 o'clock. Anthony made a few calls to different pizza places. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommates that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park...
Bro, first of all, why are you walking alone at like 4 or 2 in the morning? Second of all, it's normal to decide being a not a night person, but you could just stay home and play, I don't know, Among Us or something. Gee.
As it was most nights, was completely empty. I went down a short side street in order to loop back down my apartment when I first noticed him.
Who?
At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving.
This is too creepy, man. What's the entertainment? Entertainment. Hmm. I think I knew what to pick, because I'm just trying to find it.
I was 13 when this happened. My parents left on a business trip to LA, so I had to stay home. My dad gave me his card so that I could order whatever I needed, so I kinda enjoyed being alone. And I wasn't scared because I've been home alone so many times, and besides, it was only for 3 days. Well, this was around the time the clowns were breaking into houses and doing some weird stuff. But they never came to my area since they usually hit more quiet places, especially the area near a forest. Although we had a fence that could easily allow someone to climb over, we didn't really think much about it because the area where we lived in was very safe. Anyway, it was around 6 p.m. and this was in the winter, so it got dark pretty fast. We had a glass room at the back of the house, also known as a conservatory, and it leads straight to the garden. The room was right next to the kitchen. I got a little hungry, so I went to the fridge, took out some snacks, and went back to the living room to continue watching TV. There was a roof on the glass room that intensified any sound that landed on top of it, even the gentlest drop of water. That day, it was raining heavily, so it was too noisy to hear anything except the rainfalls pounding on the roof. About a few minutes later, I was quite sleepy, so I decided to go up to my room and lay down. I was about to grab my phone and check my social media, but then I heard something drop really hard on something downstairs. It really creeped me out. I got really scared, but decided to go downstairs to check, thinking that it would be nothing. So I came out of my room, went halfway down the staircase, and looked down the hallway. The whole area was dark, but I knew that someone was standing there. I saw the back of a silhouette. I quickly went to my room, trying not to make any noise. Then I heard someone walking around the living room. I immediately called the police and whispered to the operator that I needed help ASAP. But all of a sudden, I had a sneezing fit. I was so panicked at that moment, so I instantly ran to the bathroom since it was the only room with a lock. As I was reaching the bathroom, he sprinted up the stairs so fast. I locked the door and tried not to cry. The man tried to open the door. He kept turning the doorknob. The bathroom had a small blurry window, but I was able to see outside. So, just then, I got a glimpse of what was at the door. It was a clown, with green hair and without a nose. He was wearing a very weird outfit and was holding a gigantic knife. I had no other choice, so I quickly hopped inside the bath, opened the big window, and jumped out. I slid off the big roof and fell on the concrete. I couldn't even feel my injury because I was so scared. As I was about to hop on the fence, I heard the cops. They entered our house, and after that, they arrested and cuffed him. When he walked past me, I was so scared and my body was shivering. But I was glad that it was over. The police contacted my parents, so they came back home in a hurry. I would see them again, and I knew that I was safe now. From then on, I never stayed at home alone, and that clown guy was in prison for several years for scaring kids and for possible murder.
Crazy.
Run!
My family is a small farm here in Kirkwood, upstate New York. We grow a few veggies, keep a few chickens, nothing too spectacular, but it's home and we love it. But a little while ago, back in early 2019, we got woken up by something in the middle of the night that...
What is going on?
I grew up in the Midwest United States. During the 90s, my family lived in a tight-knit community, and we would often have get-togethers and barbecues with our neighbors. It was truly the American dream. My brother and I were very good friends with all the kids from our neighborhood, and whenever we'd have one of these gatherings, all the kids would get together for a game of manhunt. To avoid any of the back and forth of who would be chosen as the hider and the seekers, my brothers and I would usually volunteer to be the seekers. There was this giant forest area outside of our neighborhood where the games would take place. And since we would often go fishing with my dad around this area, we knew it pretty well. You could say we were all very competitive. I remember it was the 4th of July, 1996. The entire community threw a party at the neighborhood park. And of course, this meant that we kids were going to have our traditional game of manhunt. One of the biggest we've ever had, and it would take place after the fireworks show. By the time the fireworks stopped, I'd say it was around 9:30 p.m. Shortly after, we gathered everyone for a game and began around 9:45. Things started out like any other game. We caught most of the low-level hiders within the first 10 minutes. However, there were still some of the older kids hiding out in some of the more obscured areas of the park. We were always told never to go too deep into the woods. To give you some perspective, the park we were at was at the very back.
My name is Pascal. I'm 22 years old now, but this event happened 3 years ago when I was 19. It happened in the middle of the night when my parents were away for an important company meeting. The company was kind of far away from where we lived, so I stayed home by myself while they were gone. One time, while I was at home alone, I looked out the window randomly and froze. There was a tall man, almost dressed entirely in black. He was wearing a tuxedo and holding a kitchen knife. This guy was standing right outside of the door, looking at me. He wasn't laughing at all, and his head was twitching continuously. "Sir, please get off our property, otherwise I'll call the police." I opened the window and told him. Then the man replied, "Oh, you can do that if you want, as long as you don't look away." Because of this strange attitude, I felt anxious, so I grabbed my cell phone and called the police. But when I looked out the window again, my name is Pascal. I'm 22 years old now, but this event happened 3 years ago when I was 19. It happened in the middle of the night when my parents were away for an important company meeting. The company was kind of far away from where we lived, so I stayed home by myself while they were gone. One time, while I was at home alone, I looked out the window randomly and froze. There was a tall man, almost dressed entirely in black. He was wearing a tuxedo and holding a kitchen knife. This guy was standing right outside of the door, looking at me. He wasn't laughing at all, and his head was twitching continuously. "Sir, please get off our property, otherwise I'll call the police." I opened the window and told him. Then the man replied, "Oh, you can do that if you want, as long as you don't look away." Because of this strange attitude, I felt anxious, so I grabbed my cell phone and called the police. But when I looked out the window again, he was gone. At that very moment, I heard footsteps coming from downstairs. suddenly remembered that I forgot to lock my garden door, so it was still open. I thought I was gonna die at first, but then I pulled myself together. I got my bat and looked down the stairs, slowly, trying not to make a sound. There he was. He was just staring at me. He didn't move, but said, "I told you not to look away." A few moments later, we heard sirens. The man still did not move. But then he suddenly changed his mind and walked over to me. I tried to swing my bat towards him, but I was so scared. I couldn't do anything except scream. The police broke down the door. One policeman tried to arrest him, and the other one tried to take the knife away from him, but the man resisted. He was strong. Even though he was outnumbered, they couldn't stop him. They threatened to shoot him in the foot, but he didn't care. Furthermore, he attacked the two policemen, and they tumbled down to the ground. I ran to one of the rooms and slammed the door shut, but he kicked in the door. When the door opened, I could see his face, and I will never, ever forget that moment. However, at that very moment, the police caught up to him and shot his foot. The guy started screaming in pain. Shortly after that, he managed to jump outside of a window and disappeared. The policemen chased after him, but unfortunately, they failed to arrest him. I never saw that guy again. I'm glad that I survived that incident, but I also feel nervous that he'll come to my house again. From that day on, I always made sure I locked all the doors and windows.
Okay, it's time for the fifth and final. This one's here.
The year-end sales event is on at McCarthy. Search McCarthy Chevy Lee Summit. Shop new Chevys, then save up to
I am a 19-year-old male, and this happened many years ago when I was very young. To give you an idea of the layout of our house back then, the living room has multiple windows that directly look out onto the back garden. There's a big gate in our driveway to stop anyone from getting in. Next to the living room is the kitchen, which also has more windows, but also the back door. This will be relevant to the story. So my mother was completing the household chores as she does one day. I was sitting in the living room watching television on the sofa with my back to the living room windows. All of a sudden, I saw a figure reflecting off of the picture frame hanging on the wall opposite the window. I asked my mom if my dad was back from work, to which she said no. I'll never ever forget the look of horror on her face when I told her that yes, he was. He's in the garden. She looked outside the window and almost had a heart attack when she saw a scruffy-looking but fairly built man outside the living room window. This didn't seem to faze him at all, though. He psychotically smiled at my mother through the glass, and my mom asked him what he was doing on our property. He said nothing, with the same sadistic smirk on his face. She said that she was going to call the police, and what he said is one of the scariest things I've ever heard. He screamed at my mother through the glass that if she even got her phone out, that he would break the glass. She did not know what to do. She paused and tried to rapidly think of what to do next, how to keep us both safe. She wanted to protect me by calling the police, but she also didn't want him to hurt me if she did try to call them. As soon as he saw that she was terrified, he ran for the back door. Luckily, it was locked because my mom has always been a paranoid person, so she always locks the doors. He screamed at her to let him in, or if she didn't, he'd find a way in and kill us both. My mother told him to fuck off, which enraged him, and he pulled out a pocket knife and began bashing hard against the windows. I was still oblivious to what was happening, as I just thought it was my dad. I was very young. My mom frantically grabbed me, and I don't mean picked me up. She literally grabbed me off the sofa and booked it up the stairs. We were backing up in the upstairs hallway, looking for anywhere to hide, when my mom's younger brother popped out of his room with his headphones on. My mom didn't even realize he was home, and he clearly didn't hear the commotion downstairs because of his headphones. My uncle was 25 at the time and was really well built. He's intimidated a lot of people. My mom cried and told him that there's a guy who's trying to break in. While she's telling him this, that creepy lunatic screamed from downstairs that he was in the house. He said cynically, "Boogeyman is coming out to get you," which really freaked me out. It freaked me out so much that I actually remember that to this day. Anyway, since the guy didn't know my uncle was home, he kept yelling and telling us to come out and that it wouldn't be painful. My uncle told us to lock ourselves in the bathroom and call the police. We did, and after 5 minutes of groaning and blatant violence downstairs, the police stormed in and found the guy bloodied and my uncle on top of him, beating him mercilessly. My uncle really didn't hold back. Turns out that he was a known pedophile, which is why he was watching me for so long while I was watching TV. After that day, my mom was terrified to be home alone at the house. I loved it as a child because I found the running and hiding fun, obviously because I was young. I can never thank my uncle enough for being there at the right time when my mother clearly forgot that he was still home. It honestly gives me chills, wondering what he would have done to my mother and myself if my uncle was not there.
Well, brothers, that is Spooky Terrifying Wonder, and you all have a good rest of your day.